I'm here today because of the power of grace and one good man, my husband Jonas. My greatest success was not Auntie Anne's the Pretzels, but Auntie Anne the person. To overcome obstacles in our life and in our business, one must overcome themselves. Yeah. I discovered a new principle, the new view of confession, that gave me the courage to overcome the many obstacles that I faced on a daily basis. This new view of confession is rooted in grace and not in guilt. It simply means to break your silence by sharing your story, because you do have one, and your struggles. One thing I discovered on my journey, my discovery of this new confession, was that the power of the one to another confession. Confess your faults one to another so that you may be healed. When we begin to do this, we're healed relationally and emotionally because we stop hiding. I grew up as a little Amish girl on a farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And it's there that we drove horses and buggies, and it was life on a farm, hard work. I discovered the value of faith, family, and teamwork on that farm. There were 8 of us kids, and so we were a pretty good team. We got lots of work done on any given day. One thing that I learned growing up as a little Amish girl was the power of confession. I call it the old view. It still works, but it was my view of confession as a little girl. The old view of confession in the Amish order, if you sin or you commit something, you do something wrong against the order of the church, then it's required of you to make a public confession in front of the whole congregation. This view of confession is tied to doing something wrong. When I sin, I confess to God. He forgives me. Maybe I confess to a priest, and my sin is absolved. Maybe I need to go to court because I've done something wrong, and I hope that what I've done can be resolved. Always tied to doing something wrong, and we must confess. Well, as a little girl, I made a pretty strong decision that I was never going to do anything too wrong. I wanted to be a good girl. I never wanted to make that public confession. The old view of confession makes us want to hide and keep secrets. I began my lifestyle of keeping secrets. September the 8th, 1975. It was a beautiful fall morning. Our 19-month-old Angela Joy, our daughter, was on her little trek to see Grandma. And my sister, who was driving a farm tractor that morning, was scooping up sand. And when she backed up and looked forward again, she realized that she'd run over our 19-month-old daughter. Angela was killed instantly that morning. My grief, as you may well understand, some of you know, of losing Angela was too deep for words. As Angie made her ascent into heaven that day, I began my very slow process of a descent into a world of emotional pain and spiritual confusion. I'd done it all right. I thought I did. I was a pretty good girl. But the pain of losing Angie put me into a world of secrets and silence. I began feeling bad for feeling bad and starting to feel guilty. Like, why can I not, overcome this and be a good wife and a good mom again? I was totally disconnected. I went to see my pastor, feeling relief as I began to unload and doing the one to another confession thing, telling him how I feel and feeling better. But when I left his office that morning, before I left, he seduced me. The result of that was a 6-year-long abusive relationship, abuse of every kind. That day, I decided that I could never tell anyone this secret. And once again, I went into a life of silence. It's in this life, this kind of life of silence and secrets, that I began to die a little bit every day because I was disconnected. Dr. Richard Dobbins says, alone we die, but connected we live. I was dying, and no one noticed because I learned how to pretend. I found myself with pain, blame, and shame that was more than I could bear. It was during this time that I really wanted to tell my husband, but I didn't have the courage. The old style of confession. It's just too hard. It's humiliating. And it can feel heartless. In spite of that, I did the hard confession that day. And I'll never forget the freedom that I felt. I didn't know that that one confession would give me the power to transform my life. I didn't know that out of our pain, our purpose was being formed. And I didn't know that I would go on to become a businesswoman one day. How would I ever know? Even though there are times we have to do the hard confession, it's still important to do. It's the new view of confession that really became a part of my life. It's pretty simple. It's all about sharing your past and sharing your present. Sharing your past, it's doing what I did. It's doing the hard thing. What is it? What are the secrets? What are the things you struggle with? Instead of hiding, find someone that you can trust and tell them. Begin to share your past. It will set you free. And then you'll be able to begin to share your present on a daily basis. We all struggle, and yet, most times we struggle alone. And when we understand the power of this sharing with each other, it begins to set us free. The old view of confession has far-reaching negative impacts, and the new view has far-reaching positive impacts. When you begin this lifestyle, you no longer feel the need to whine and complain because you're feeling all defeated on the inside. You no longer feel the need to control everyone and everything around you because this power of confession helps you understand that my response is my responsibility. I am responsible for me and for everything that happens to me. That's the power of the new confession. It gives us the power to experience freedom and our own story of redemption. The morning I told my husband, I felt the freedom, the weight of the world just rolling off of my back. And I also realized that morning that one day, our own story of redemption, we would see it. It began that moment, our story of redemption. Auntie Anne's is part of that story. Many people call it a modern-day business miracle. We launched an international franchise company with no formal education, with no capital, and with no business plan. No kidding. And today, Auntie Anne's has gone around the world. We're in 48 states, in 24 countries, with over 800 million in annual sales. Yeah. I can't tell you if I would never have made that confession to my husband that day, none of this would have ever happened. The power of confession. Can you imagine your life and our world without Auntie Anne's pretzels? We all know that our world needs transparency, honesty, and this new view will impact us in our homes and in the workplace. We no longer feel the need to hide behind closed doors. We don't need to hide behind our computers and our keyboards, but we just simply need to be real. When I make a mistake or I feel like I've done something wrong, we can actually just be real. I can tell you what happened. I can talk about it. Our leadership style changes. This new view of confession begins to change you from the inside out, and you will become a brand new person. I promise you, it takes hard work, but it's possible. I love the quote by Brennan Manning. A gradual transformation takes place in the process of confession. We go from an attitude of self-hatred to an attitude of self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is not being self-centered. When we accept ourselves for who we are, we cease to hunger for power or acceptance of others. We no longer care about being popular or powerful. It doesn't matter anymore. We're not afraid of criticism, and we no longer desire to please others. This is powerful. Being true to ourselves brings inner peace and lasting hope. Accepting ourselves allows us then to choose behaviors that benefit ourselves and everyone around us. This is a perfect description of a life that gets this concept, the new view of confession. I encourage you to practice this. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of self-discipline, but practice it, and you will experience inner peace. And this concept will allow you then to be the person that God wants you to be, and you'll be able to fulfill the purpose for which you were created. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.